So in this video, we're going to start adding animation and getting our enemy to flip correctly when walking towards our player character. So why don't we just jump on into it? All right, first we're going to go and open up our enemy walk. So I'm going to open up my enemy walk script that I was tinkering with last video here, and we're going to make some even more. We're going to make even more variables here. Let's do a public float, or let's do a public game object. Yeah, that's what I want. Sprite object. And we're going to go down here. We're going to call or initially declare an animator. All right, these two variables are going to serve to let us access our animation controller on our character here. This guy right here will be a public game object variable. Why don't we go ahead and just highlight my sentinel so we can see the new variables we've added here. I guess it would help if I saved. I'm getting in a bad habit of doing that. All right. So we have a sprite object with none here. And why don't we go ahead and click on our Sentinel sprite here, and we can see that our sprite render is attached to this object and our animator controller is attached to this object. So what we need to do is we need to drag and drop our Sentinel sprite onto our sprite object. This will allow us to get at these components here to drive our animation. That'll be pretty important. And our animator variable we call right here will allow us to actually access our animator controller on our Sentinel sprite object. All right, with those two variables called, let's move on to our next step. Now we actually need to initialize our animator variable equals, what is it, sprite object dot get component animator. All right, so that line of code basically assigned our local variable for our animator so we can get at our animation window down here when Unity's compiling. Give it a second. This variable is going to allow us to get at our states here in our animator window. We did that by saying, okay, we're going to look at our sprite object that we just dragged onto our inspector here, and we're going to get the animator component off of it. So now I can access my animator window through this local variable here. So the next thing we need to do is we need to start calling some animations from our animation window here. All right, let's do it. So let's take a look at our animator window here. I want to make sure I have Sentinel selected. I don't want to accidentally have Gambit selected because their animator windows are going to be different after this step. So with Sentinel selected, and more importantly, or more specifically, Sentinel Sprite, since that's where our animator component is attached, we're going to rework the way our walk parameter works, or our speed parameter works. For Gambit, we controlled our transition between idle to walk based on the movement or movement speed of the actual game object. I'm going to do something a little bit more, I guess, heavy-handed here. I'm going to actually make a bool here and call this walk. We're going to control our walking animation the same way we have with our attack and blocks and all the other ones. So with my new walk boolean created, I'm going to go in and update these transitions. So I'm going to click on the arrow to walk, and I'm going to save it or change it to walk here, and it's going to be true when we go to walk, and when we come out of walk, it's going to drive it with false. All right, so with that set up, now we can start calling on our animation. So why don't we do that? Let's see. We're going back to our enemy walk script real quickly. And we need to input a line of code that'll actually access our animator window down here. So let's go on down to our update function, and inside my if statement that drives the actual locomotion of our character, what actually moves it, we can do a line of code that says something like animator. We're calling our local variable that we declared here and initialized here. Animator dot set bool, and this will allow us to access our walk boolean that we just defined down here in our parameters tab in our animator window. And we're going to set our boolean walk to true, like so. All right. Why don't we test this? Because anytime our character is in sight Now we're going to set a destination for our character. We're going to make sure our enemy doesn't rotate unnecessarily. And now we're going to fire off our walking animation in our walking state right here. I'm going to make sure I save that, Control S. All right. So hopefully now when our character moves towards, or when our enemy moves towards our player, there we go. Now we have our walk cycle fired. But you see another problem here. He's at our character, or our player character, but he doesn't stop walking, and he's still not flipped. Well, let's tackle one of those things right now. Let's get him to stop walking once he gets to his destination, and have him go back into an idle loop. So I'm gonna unplay that, and let's figure out how we can do that. All right. So I think the first thing we'll do is we'll go to our enemy site script. Let's revisit our enemy site script. We're not done with this script by a long shot. There's a few more things we're going to do to this enemy site script real quickly. And I'm going to make a public float, and I want to call this target distance. This variable here will allow us to see how far away our enemy is from our player. So when our enemy gets close enough to our player, we can tell with target distance, and we can tell it to quit the walking animation based on the target distance here. But we have to figure out our target distance first before we can get to that end goal. So why don't we do that right now? So in our update function, we're going to say our target distance equals, we're going to use a vector3 function called distance. That's pretty handy they call it that, right? And we're going to it takes two values here, a vector of an object and a vector of another object. The two objects we're trying to find our distance between is our target, which is our player right now. So we're going to say target, and I think I might need to, after I type this, I think I might need to position that because we haven't declared what our target is yet. So just bear with me. We're going to say target transform.position. Target.transform.position will give a vector3 value and XYZ coordinate here. And then we're going to do a comma. And then we're going to say the position of the current game object we're on, which is our enemy. Let me do the autocorrect, make sure I get everything. There we go. And then end it with a semicolon. And what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to place it right under target because we need to find what our target is before we can start finding the position of our target that we need in our distance distance function we're calling right here. So I'm going to hit Control S. So now we have distance from our target here. So why don't we test that inside of our game scene? I'm going to select Sentinel again, and now in enemy site, we got a syntax error probably to deal with. Yeah, I misspelled public. Gotta love it. Control S. That should have been a dead giveaway when that didn't turn cyan right there. So hit Control S. We'll go in. And we're seeing a few error messages. So let's troubleshoot that together real quick. All right. Position, no extension of position. And if you double click a error message in your console window, it'll actually tell you where the problem is. So it looks like we got a problem with this line of code here. And even though there are probably like 3 different error codes here, there's probably just one thing we got to tweak to get this line of code working correctly. So, oh, another syntax error. I didn't see it because my window was smaller. All right, great. So if we save that, let Unity compile, and looks like everything's good. Now we should see a target distance variable in our inspector over here on our enemy object here. So if I hit play, we should automatically find the distance to my target. And even though my enemy's not walking towards my player, I'm still finding the distance. So if I walk further away, we can see this distance changing. And I've already triggered the walking animation here. So the next thing we need to do is we need to compare this target distance to a value, so whenever he gets close enough, we can tell it to stop walking. So let's go back over to our enemy walk script, and we're going to qualify this stop walking thing we're trying to do with another if statement. So we're going to say if, let's say, enemy site dot target distance. We're calling on that distance value we just found out a second ago. And let's just hard code an arbitrary value here, 1.0f. So if our target distance is less than 1 unit away, that means if we're really close to our player, then why don't we say animator set bool, and we'll take our walk and we'll set it to false. All right, so this should say that when our enemy is close enough to our player, we're going to deactivate or make our walk boolean false. All right, let's press play and see what we get. All right, there we go. We're inside here. Well, it's still not working. Well, if we look here, we can see in our animator window, we're still stuck in our walk state here, but our target distance is just hovering right above one unit. And you can see in my code here that for my walk boolean to become false, the target distance needs to be below 1. So what's the problem here? I don't want to set it to I don't want to set the target distance for it to stop too far away. The problem is our collider boxes for our rigid bodies that we set up in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and adjust these for both Gambit and both our Sentinel. So we're going to why don't we hide our Sentinel for now, and I'm going to go and revisit Gambit. I'm going to hide his hitbox, and I'm going to go and bring up his box collider. And this huge box collider we set up without really thinking about it is physically impairing our Sentinel from getting any closer. It's physically impairing our Sentinel to be within that 1 unit measurement that we want right here for him to stop walking with a false Boolean call right there. So why don't we just go in and fix our... We're going to go in and fix our collider here. We're going to make it really skinny. All right, so we're going to go in and make it a little bit skinnier. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the sides as well. We're really just going to cover the substantial parts of the character here. Kind of leave out, some limbs right here. So that size right there should be pretty good. Now our Sentinel can physically get closer to our Gambit. So I'm going to bring back my Sentinel, and why don't I go and examine his? We got a lot of things going on over here. I can't even see my hitbox. So if we collapse some of our components over here and hide or disable my hitbox, I can go back to my Sentinel. Now I see his box collider, and he's kind of already good here, but I want to make it even skinnier. I'm just going to make sure that no colliders are keeping my Sentinel from getting too close to Gambit here. So I'm just doing that by going to my edit collider button. It's bringing up, well, I didn't want to do that. So now we have 2 skinny box colliders here. Why don't we test the scene out now? So my Sentinel's still not flipped, but we'll fix it. And there we go. But you'll notice we have another problem. Our Sentinel is kind of sliding when he gets close enough. He stops, he slides in. It's not very, it doesn't look very good. And another thing's happened too. Gambit is pushing my Sentinel out of the way like he was on ice or something. So why don't we do one more thing for our Sentinel here. I'm going to go to my rigid body, and I'm going to make it kinematic, meaning no outside physical forces will be able to push and shove my Sentinel out of the way anymore. All right. So now, when we get close enough, we still have that sliding, but I can't physically push my Sentinel away. And a lot of what we're going to be doing in the next few videos is just building a little bit here and there and refining it even more. We started out with a simple move script that had our Sentinel just crazily move at our target. Now we're kind of getting to the point where we can control our animations. So in the next video, we're going to fix his flip so he can get flipped correctly whenever Gambit is on according to the right side, because we don't want our Sentinel moonwalking towards our player here. I mean, that looks cool and all, but I mean, the Sentinel ain't no king of pop, so I don't think we should allow him to do that. So in the next video, we're going to fix that flipping function, and we're even going to refine, in the further videos, we're going to refine this whole get to the target area as well, because right now our Sentinel is kind of just crowding on top of my player. That's not very good behavior if I want my Sentinel to turn and face my player and give him a proper showdown. So in the next video, let's fix those things.